Behind every great model is a great story. And for this one, I have a concept of a double flamethrower Mando. Now, I didn't actually create this model. This was done by Ty from Darkfire, and he was doing Mythari March and asked for concepts. He did an amazing job of bringing Burn Bazaar to life. Now, all I needed to do was paint him. I printed quite a few options in Soraya Tech Nylon Black on my Elegoo Satin 4 Ultra. I primed everything in black lacquer primer. It's Mr. Colour, Mr. Surfacer, and it goes on really finely. I followed that up with some base colours to give me a quick start on the painting. The edges of these bases got Mr. Colour Tire Black. A lot of my armour is also going to be black, so I used it on the figures too. The fire areas and anywhere it might reflect onto got white primer because, quite frankly, painting over black is a real pain when you want to do vibrant fire colours. The bases have smoke plumes and they're going to be a grey-white, so I also went over those with white just to give me that head start. So the last time I painted jetpacks and fire, I started with clear resin and you get a lovely translucent effect. But this time I'm starting with white primer. And to be honest, it's not white enough. It's fine for the jetpack smoke, but for the actual flamethrower, I need to start with a pure white base. So I went with a really heavy body acrylic paint and made sure my white was really, really white. I want the inside of the jetpacks to be white smoke and it to get darker as it comes out. So I made sure I got white in the depths of all the cracks so that I could do dry brushing in a lighter grey in a minute. And just like the fire, the armour is going to have some bright patches on where it's red and orange. And for those, to make sure they really zing, I've put on a white primer coat. So I'm just getting out the fine 10/0 liner brush and adding the white wherever I'm going to do a solid colour in a minute. Now I know I've painted the most of this model black, but actually I don't want it to be black because I've nowhere to go. I can only paint highlights now. I can't paint shadows easily because it's already as dark as it's ever going to go. So to get around that, I dry brushed a medium grey over everything. It allows me to go lighter if I want to with a white and to go darker again with a wash. It's great for bringing out details too. I used the same grey to dry brush the outer sections, the sort of bubbles out on the jetpack smoke. And I actually did it in a couple of times with darker and darker greys until eventually I got a not too dark, because I actually think jetpack smoke should be registering almost as white. And now the fun begins. Flames! Yes, we're starting with yellow and working out to a dark burnt orange. And so I need to get this fluorescent yellow paint into all of the cracks. It's not a great paint because it's slightly greeny, but it won't be that noticeable by the time everything else is in. Now fire, like many things, is darkest on the outside and lightest in the middle. So you almost have to reverse the way you normally dry brush, because we normally dry brush lighter colours. In this case, we're about to dry brush darker colours. So for the jetpacks, I actually hand painted on orange. It would be nice if you could get a cone effect, but it's really hard to do. So I just kept the flames near the top. But the flamethrowers were dry brushed with this fluorescent orange acrylic paint. I love dry brushing as a technique. It's so easy to do. Two things you need to remember. One, dry. It has to be fairly dry. You don't want to put too much paint on with any one pass. And two, if you can get a brush that's nice and broad and soft like this one, this is an Army Painter dry brush, it does make it much easier. Once I got a fluorescent orange on, I added a bit of normal orange paint onto it just to give it a bit more body and went over it all again. I mean, that's another trick with dry brushing. Build up many different layers. Don't try and do it all in one go. I'm also building up these darker oranges generally closer to the end of the flamethrower where it's had a bit of time to spread out and get darker, rather than near the jet where it's still pure liquid fire. Finally, I added a sort of burnt orange, a browny orange right at the end. Really simple to do, and I'm amazed how effective these flamethrowers are with just 3 or 4 coats of paint dry brushed on. With the flames done, it's time to move on to the armour. Now, I've come up with two schemes. One, very solid, loads of reds and a little bit of orange. The other, just going around the edges and putting some trim around the edges of a black base armour. And as I've got 4 Mandos I'm painting, I can do the 2 with the 2 flamethrowers in each of those different styles, and then do the same again with the 1 flamethrower models. So I'm going to end up with 4 different Mandos at the end. I didn't really have any great plans for the colour schemes though, so I just made them up as I went. Started with orange and added some red. If you're a little bit stuck, there's actually an online generator where you can colour in a Mando, and I'll put the link down below. I'm not really into edge highlighting, but I made a token showing by going over some of the larger armour pieces with some lighter colours. So I added some yellow and white into the orange to brighten it, lighten it a bit. And then I did the same with the red. You can't really put white into red or you get pink, but you can put a more orangey toned highlight on just to add something a little bit different on those edges to represent light striking them. I also watered down some orange and used it to represent the glow, that object source lighting, as people like to call it, OSL, that you got from the flamethrowers. And I caught the areas where the flame would be reflecting in the armour. And here's just a quick overview so you can see my paint palette and setup. I've got my paints, I've got my water in a very low dish, I've got my wet palette, which is an Armour Painter wet palette, and I've got a towel, a paper towel, to take off any excess paint. Really useful when you're dry brushing. Now there's one bit of advice that every new painter is given, and that is to thin your paints well. I'm thinning this Vallejo black grey. It comes out a bit variable depending how well I've shaken it, but it comes out too thick to just go on a mini. All you'll get are the brush marks when you want to put the washes on, and it'll be really distinctive. So you thin it down well. And I know it's frustrating if you're trying to put white on, and there is a temptation, and I fall prey to it all the time, to put too much paint on too thick, but then your pauldrons will end up lumpy. And that's the minis painted, but there's a little bit more you can do to make them look better. First up, you can put a wash that deepens out all the shadows and brings out the detail. Remember that most of it, other than the armour itself, is just dry brushed at the moment. I went over mine using a black wash. I rarely use a black wash, but this is black armour and black under flight suit. So for that, I used Tamiya enamel panel line wash. It's great because when you make mistakes and it gets into your flamethrowers or into places you don't want it, you can take it off like I am here with a brush or with a cotton bud dipped in white spirit. I left the washes to dry for a day and I felt like I'd lost some of my OSL and the highlights, so I just went through and touched up and added some more defined shine where that light from the flamethrower will be hitting the edges of the armour. I think it's important to step back after a while and just check, is your mini looking right? Is it hitting all the notes that you want it to? Final thing to do was to add a bit of metallic shine to those jetpacks. Now I could have done this in a number of ways. I've actually used a pigment. It's Dark Steel by AK Interactive, and if you just brush it on, I'm using a cotton bud here, it buffs up to a sort of metallic shine. Not too bright, more like a worn metal scuffed look perhaps, than a bright shiny metal look. If you wanted, you could paint the jetpacks chrome or something like that. And with that done, I was done. Now I haven't varnished these because they're display models. You would want to go and put a coat of varnish on if you're putting them on a tabletop. And here we are, 4 little Mandos ready to go on the table, or in this case, add to my sci-fi city. There's another Mando painting video going up in a couple of weeks. This time it's The Father, so make sure you subscribe and hit notifications so you don't miss it. And if you want to see some behind the scenes videos or get early releases, don't forget you can join my Patreon or YouTube channel membership.